Welcome to a special edition of the We Gotta Talk podcast. I'm streaming on Substack for the first time, and it looks like it's going well so far. So if you're here live and feel compelled to drop a question, great. If not, and you're hearing this on the podcast, drop in on Instagram and I will tag today's guest and we can keep the conversation going there. But today's guest, I've been looking forward to talking with him for a while because he's someone whose presence on social media I've been following. He is a cyber threat and open source intelligence analyst, a national security analyst, investigative journalist. He has a background in cyber threat intelligence, specifically dealing with issues like counter misinformation and disinformation. So we'll get into what that even means. He also has a background in the US military, having served in the Air Force, and he is also the CEO of Shadowgraph Intelligence, which is a digital investigations firm. Travis Hawley, thank you so much for being on We Gotta Talk. I am grateful for your time today. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. These are troubling times in our information environment, and we need to have a lot more of these conversations about how our digital diet is affecting our safety, our security, and our privacy.
Yeah, I deal a lot with that as it relates to news, and I'm sure you've seen the sort of the rot of certain types of ideas really spreading rapidly online, and we'll get into that. But I guess we lead off by asking, what is cognitive warfare? And on some level, based on what you said, I'm guessing the answer is yes. Are we all victims of this in the digital age in some form or fashion?
Yeah, so cognitive warfare could be like a catch-all term for many different disciplines, including psychological operations, information operations, military deception. There's many different disciplines and components under it. But at the end of the day, the cognitive warfare that we are facing, if we zoom out to that terminology, is really steering the beliefs, the the opinions, the emotions, and downstream from that, the actions of a population. And never before has the world had the technology to do this in real time, at scale, and with different campaigns like A B testing. I'm using marketing terminology here. The ability to just really make so many permutations to target all these different audiences, to divide them or to unite them. And the cognitive warfare domain right now is, I think, becoming sort of common knowledge to the average person, where it used to be somewhat of like a military terminology. And now I think we're all sensing it and feeling it and wrapping our heads around what that means and what that's doing to us. So yeah, that's in a sense, cognitive warfare is to shape the perceptions, the beliefs, whatnot of people so that you can change their behavior.
There are so many questions I want to ask you as it relates to current events happening in the world. And I know it will be difficult to pin one thing down with this question, but is there a storyline or a piece of information that's floating around? And we're going to use social media as the sort of place where this is happening, because I think that's where most people are interacting with information these days. What is the most pernicious storyline right now? What version of cognitive warfare are you seeing waged on the minds of Americans in specifically that is most bothersome to you?
I think the most important one that the most people should be able to relate to is that the Western world, in particular, the US, is the bad guy.
Yeah.
And the Western values and Western systems have failed, and that the alternatives out there might be better.
Mm.
Communism, fascism, um, Islamism, whether it's religious or purely ideological or economical, these other systems are better somehow, despite the objective evidence that they fail and create the most harm in the world. The cognitive warfare or the information operations that are happening on the internet and outside the internet, to be very clear, on our university campuses, in the media, are steering societies to believe that our systems are actually the oppressive systems, and the ones that lead to the most harm. Of course, this is demonstrably objectively false. Not that there isn't harm or issues. Clearly, there are. I think this is the most important topic that we should be talking about because it doesn't exclude certain people, whether it's their religious, their gender, whatever the thing is. It's not personal. It's like, no, this is our country that
Yeah.
is under attack by these propaganda campaigns.
It used to be the one factor under which we could all unite, and now it is that's not even a starting point, really. I mean, I'm pretty unapologetically proud to be an American, and I've said before, I don't know what it is in people who have divorced from that belief system in my generation, what causes that. I sometimes tend to think that proximity to recent immigration or having heard, say, a grandparent or a parent story about how America opened up an opportunity or a world of opportunity to them that they didn't have. Maybe they came from those more authoritarian or fascist style governments or leaderships in their former countries, and they came over, started the family here, raised us, the kids and grandkids, and said, you don't even know how good you have it. I think if I did not have the proximity to, in my case, a grandparent who really beat that drum, it would be easy to forget. And I wonder if you can detect any commonality between these people who are divorcing themselves from that belief system. The ones that are saying America is the great evil. I mean, they're essentially parroting what you're hearing the IRGC in Iran
Right.
say, which is, we are the great Satan. And I'm just like, wait, tell me more. Now, I understand there's some political discourse that divides people these days, but what do you think is the reason that some people have really taken a turn on that topic?
So the soil for what people need to understand is demoralization. Demoralization is the state in which a lot of the West, in particular the US, is in. And a demoralized society is a society that is ripe to be manipulated with cognitive warfare.
Mhm.
And the demoralization was not an accident. It was influenced by foreign actors initially, uh, 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 especially during the Cold War. And now, over the last decades, many different events and different influences have really exacerbated our level of demoralization. Now, one thing to keep in mind is there are foreign actors and domestic actors who foment the demoralization, but we cannot put all of the blame on people who inflame it. Something that is true, which is hard to swallow, is that we do have a lot of grievances, and grievances are, sometimes unsubstantiated because of your perception or lack of gratitude. But there's a lot of grievances that are true that if we don't address, the demoralization will not improve, such as the cost of living, the cost of homes, the cost of healthcare, our government's fraud, waste, and abuse, institutions lying to us, law enforcement not being able to, in some cases, do their job as well as they used to be, and crimes rising. I mean, you name it. There are real grievances that people have. And until those grievances are addressed, improved, the level of demoralization will not drop. And if the level of demoralization does not drop, then the level of self hatred and seeking of alternate systems and beliefs will not change either. And there's only so much we can do to address that with counter cognitive warfare, education, media literacy. These are tools that we must employ because it will mitigate this level of societal and civil disruption. But at the end of the day, there's a ceiling to how much we can achieve through those tools if there are still real grievances at play. And there are.
You brought up a cost of living, which is something that I think many Americans, a topic a lot of Americans vote on, a very real concern, an issue, a matter of life and death, maybe for some American families, the cost of living. And we saw this topic in particular really play out in the recent New York City mayoral election. So you have a candidate, not to like pivot so specifically to a city, but I think Zohran Mamdani, the current mayor of New York is emblematic of someone who was able to seize upon what you said, which is a very real issue in American society, offer what appeared to be a solution to a lot of people. They vote him in, things are happening. And now we're seeing, okay, maybe there is no such thing as a free lunch after all. Talk about um, how leaders or how future leaders can address these very real issues responsibly without saying, but we're also going to tax you, an additional 32% when you die, and we're also going to raise your taxes. If this, I mean, it's so hard because you have people voting for him who really think, okay, I am doing a service to the people who are having a cost of living issue in New York City, even if it's not me. Let me be the good guy. Let me vote for the guy who says free things, free childcare, no raises. But what ends up happening is the exact opposite. So talk about that, how those two things can coexist, because I think that was a really great example of people seizing upon a real concern and then seeing it sort of turn on them.
This is the typical case of a vulnerable society, and we really are. And when someone comes in with promises and dreams and shiny objects, of course, it's very appealing because we're desperate. Or at least a lot of people are desperate. The average person is probably feeling some level of desperation, demoralization. So it opens up the door for people like Mamdani, or it could be on any side of politics as well, where they say, I have the solution and we're going to give you all of the things you've been wanting. And it's just too good to be true. That's just not, I mean, I'm not an economist, but I can set aside a feeling of desperation for a feeling of reality and practicality, and know that things that any political leader is saying is just unlikely, if not just false. And this is the scary part, is we have this kind of escalation of political division and demoralization, where I think we already are, I could say, but we're going to see more and more of these influencers turned politicians. And because we think as a society that, well, the traditional, I mean, even President Trump is an example of this, like where the traditional politician and system isn't serving us, is the belief. And there certainly is some merit to it, some for sure. Now we need these new types of leaders to come in and be our saviors. Unfortunately, when it comes to Mamdani, is the real issue I find there is the appeal to socialism and Islamism, this red green alliance that some people call it, of two systems that are literally counter West. And this is not to fearmonger, but we need to be very cognizant that if socialist, communist, Islamist ideas continue to grow in the West, that it does not take a statistician to see that lines will converge, and that convergence will absolutely be political violence.
Mhm. Well, I mean, we're seeing people in the streets right now demonstrating in New York City, very openly, I don't know, I just listened to it, but, uh,
No
very, let's
kings,
say,
the no king.
pro IRGC, pro Islamist
Right.
revolution style things. I mean, people are becoming unapologetic about it. It feels like, how when a kid gets angry and it's like they'll say anything just to piss you off. It's kind
Mhm.
of like an anything but, it's the same mentality. It's an anything but America. It is, the group of, I don't even know what you would call them, like cyber celebrities flying to Cuba and staying in a five-star hotel while the rest of the island is in a blackout and has been financially and economically devastated for decades. I mean, it's absurd to me, and I'm I'm wondering when it's going to turn around. The biggest question that you probably can't answer, but like what it does feel parallel universe data sometimes. I worry that the cognitive warfare has really reached an apex, and we may in fact lose some people to these types of belief systems until and unless they realize the real world consequences of living under the systems that they profess to love that are so much quote unquote better than America. I mean, are you worried is my question.
Yeah, it's very concerning because yes, there's various populations. Certainly, as always, younger populations, including myself when I was probably a teenager in early 20s, are just going to be more susceptible to the, I don't know, like revolutionary, anarchist, I want to save the world mentality. It's not entirely unnatural. I'm tend to be more concerned when I see grown adults sharing those beliefs because they have the money in their careers and the power and the influence to enact these kinds of things more so than younger populations. I'm concerned because, as you alluded to, unfortunately, humans tend to not learn their lesson without serious harm.
Mm,
And until, as you said, maybe they are a victim of these systems and ideas that they so beloved, they may not learn the lesson. And we don't see any of them emigrating to these countries to go enjoy these systems they seem to love and romanticize. So the only way for them to experience it is to create it here.
mhm.
And of course, in some ways, that's the fear of Mayor Mamdani, is if he were able to create some of these systems he's promising, which I'm not sure if he can as just a mayor, but he can certainly have a lot of influence. I think that's the scary part is, are we going to have a country that just starts to diverge into multiple systems and multipolarity of values? You
Mhm.
know, I the thing that concerns me about the West is just being simple and practical, is if we do not have shared values anymore, there it is impossible to have a stable future together. It's
Mhm.
just it's just a fact. And this is where I don't like the rhetoric about, oh, we're going to go to a civil war and all these things. I certainly don't want to fearmonger or even assess that that's happening. However, if you do just put it on a chart and
Mhm.
plot the divergence of beliefs and cooperation amongst different groups, and you see that the all diverges over time, it doesn't take Nostradamus to predict that that's going to lead us down a very scary path.
The runway, it feels like we've been on this runway long enough now that we are headed there. And I don't want I'm not a, I'm not crying doomsday, but I personally don't see a reversal happening organically. And I'm scared. I mean, I don't know. Not that this is like a therapy session for me, but I enjoy the company of a diverse, group of opinions within my friend network. I mean, maybe not on the extreme sides, of course, but
Yeah.
people that I know and love are captured by thoughts that are so easily disproved that it worries me. And this is why I'm constantly banging the drum about sourcing your information and your news from outlets that are, even though we wish news were all objective, but maybe that's a little bit diverse in its sort of political leanings, because they are so eager for comfort, for the thought that they are right, that they will never entertain something else. And I don't know, I just it feels dangerous, but I
Yeah.
guess you're right. There's only certain things you can let play out and see.
No, you're right. I mean, this is what I spend too much time doing, is debunking AI, disinformation, misinformation, all the things. And very rarely, when I provide the evidence and the analysis, the methodologies, I just show people, very rarely do they accept it. And I'm like, I'm honestly a fairly apolitical, measured, analytical, just care about the truth, no tribes necessarily type of person. And it should be very apparent by anyone who follows me. Certainly I do have my beliefs and all that too, but I don't force them down people's throats. Regardless, the point I'm making is like, if people won't even listen to me
Mhm.
and listen to the evidence I bring and the career I bring of credibility, we're in deep shit. Because most people, I'm not even trying to toot my own horn, but most people aren't like me. They really are just overtly on a side or a team or spewing misinformation. So yes, it is very concerning to me. And as you said, the unfortunate human condition, which seems to be at remarkable levels, is that the comfort of lies and the pain of ego damage is so much held higher than truth. It's entirely ironic to me that those are the same people who preach about finding the truth are seemingly the least interested in it.
Yeah, it's really wild to me, the lack of, desire to want to understand things. And again, I say the same thing as you, which is, uh, first of all, I don't want to be on anyone's team. I have enough great personal fulfillment in my life that I don't need to be on an online team. I know what I believe because it's based on a set of facts that I've spent a lot of time researching. But I do worry that we are, like you said, I mean, what's that saying? Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men. We are in the weak men phase of that
Oh
cycle,
yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
I'm as someone raising children, I'm terrified.
Objectively.
So in all of your work online, do you tend to find the same sources who are putting out misinformation time after time? Is there one geographic location maybe where this is all coming from, or groups, or so that question? And also, could you just give us your definition of misinformation too? It's a word that I'm a little wary about, and I've noted this because my misinformation is different to another person's. But if we're saying that word in this conversation, guys, it just means like information easily disproven by facts, whether you like the facts or not. So define your version of misinformation. Tell us maybe in the work that you've done where you're seeing most misinformation come from.
So this is also an issue, by the way. The fact that we don't have common definitions for things is extremely concerning because we cannot live in the same reality if we cannot define things or agree on definitions of things. So, and we see this a lot too now with warfare, all of the nonsense related to Gaza, genocide, apartheid, occupation, all of these words now you can Zionism, and you can just redefine any word you want and then use that, weaponize that, and then completely redefine reality based off your redefinition of terminology. It is so Orwellian that that's what scares me. We're living in 1984 in many ways. But let me I think I have very clean cut, understandable, fair definitions for misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation. And here they are.
Okay.
Misinformation is information that is out of context, missing context, or potentially false, that is accidentally spread. So it's about intent, right?
Misinformation includes the intent. Okay.
It's the intent. That is the operative word there, intent. Misinformation is distinct from disinformation, not because of the truthfulness of it, but by the intent. Disinformation is false information intentionally spread.
Interesting. Okay.
So disinformation we see a lot from foreign adversaries and things of that nature, but we also see it domestically. People just make up lies. Just think of a lie. Like, it's a lie. That's disinformation. Now, misinformation is it was like I said, it could just be missing the context. So that's not,
Mistake. Yeah.
it's not in, it could be partially true though.
Mhm.
And depending on who passed it, it could have been someone cut out the part of the quote, they cut out part of the video. So, yes, it was a real video. Yes, it was a real quote, but they removed important context that changes the perception of it. That is a form of misinformation as well, because uh it wasn't entirely false. But this is why there's sort of this weird spectrum between disinformation and information, because if you intentionally remove the context, that is disinformation, even though the video was real.
This is
But
what thinking of the Trump BBC piece, right? Where they clipped his January 6th speech where he said
yeah,
something in support and removed the rest of the context, which said, which had him
or the Charlottesville one where he said,
yes.
whatever about the white supremacists and stuff. Yes,
Right.
that
So they kind of fall
again.
into both, right? Because the product itself ends up being misinformation, but the intent is the disinformation. The editor, the people responsible journalistically.
So here's the issue. Here's how we stratify the difference. The people who intentionally, maybe it's even few people who cut out the context,
Mhm.
they were engaged in disinformation. However, everyone else who shared that disinformation didn't knowingly, may not have knowingly known that there was context removed and things of the nature. So they were more involved in misinformation. So
Yeah.
this is why there's sort of a relationship between them, or there can be a relationship between them when it comes from a real piece of content. Obviously, it's more clear if someone makes an AI image of something, that's just disinformation, right? That's much
Mhm.
more clean cut. The last piece to understand is malinformation.
Hmm.
Malinformation is true information, real information that's just bad. It reflects poorly on whoever the target is. And that is also very true. This could be oppositional research. This could be a quote or a clip of whatever, Trump or anyone saying something really stupid or just really offensive. Like that's just malinformation. That's not misinformation, right?
What
So
is the
there's
intention behind malinformation? Like, how could that be used in the space of cognitive warfare of someone trying to change someone's mind? Like,
easily. Politicians, for instance, the easiest, say dumb stuff all the time, or say something off the cuff, say something on a hot mic that's
right,
damaging, insulting, or contradicts other things they've said. So of
right.
course it harms their credibility, or it may affect the public's perception of who that person really is. So malinformation is super helpful in the cognitive warfare domain, but in particular, if we say when we're talking about online information operations within the media,
Mhm.
they weaponize malinformation, misinformation, and disinformation. You want to use all of those in your toolbox, and depending on maybe your morality, who the actor is, they may focus just on malinformation. I think that's the most moral thing to do, frankly, because it's real and it's just
It's real,
bad.
yeah,
Why
right,
not use that?
right.
Misinformation, this is usually more of an accident or a lack of researching, which doesn't make it okay to do. It's problematic. And then disinformation, which is clearly highly immoral, highly unethical, and illegal in many cases as well. So there's this spectrum there's a relationship between all of those.
Are you in your research finding, like I said, any geographic hotspots for where some of this misinformation is coming from? We've all heard about bot farms, these
Yeah.
like information centers where literally bots are fake accounts are
Yeah.
commenting to boost certain posts. Like, where is this happening on the map?
Okay. So one thing I need to point out is there are clearly foreign adversaries like the big four: North Korea, Russia, the Islamic Republic of Iran, China. These are the big four adversaries that engage in information operations,
Mhm.
whatever, cognitive warfare. Okay, that's true, and they're doing that at a nation state level for national security purposes. But then there are other countries outside of those big four that do engage in this stuff, like Qatar, like Turkey, like